Namaste to all. A very good morning to everyone who have joined us today for the VIKASANA program. VIKASANA program is a series of program which is going to dwell deep into the national education policy and its allied information. Thank you everyone for joining in. I deem it a great privilege and honor to welcome you all to today's event. On that note, I would like to speak a little about Disha Bharat. Disha Bharat is a non-profit social initiative started in the year 2005. We conduct programs for schools and colleges, and it's mostly for students, teachers, and parents. Our programs are mostly activity-based, and the aim of our program is to sensitize all our participants, be it students, teachers, or parents, on 5 quotients, which are the primary requirement in a person's life: physical quotient, emotional quotient, intellectual quotient, social quotient, and spiritual quotient. Fun activities are followed by reflective thinking and learning that helps our participants to understand the values that were imparted during the session. Values are the basis for a good life, and that's what Disha Bharat believes in. The minds of the youth of Bharat are to be nurtured by the important messages around the self, the country, and the culture. This, we at Disha Bharat believe, helps our students to develop holistically into successful individuals of running and being a very active citizens of tomorrow for our India. Today's webinar is titled NEP 2020 Education Towards the Psychosocial Well-Being on Learners in Higher Education Institution. The importance of psychosocial well-being is understood better now than ever before. Psychosocial existence has become the norm of today. I hope all of you resonate with me. Thank you, everyone. And I take this opportunity to introduce to you all the Dr. Padmaja, Principal of MES Academy of Higher Learning, a well-wisher and pillar to strength to Disha Bharat. Welcome you, ma'am. I request Dr. Padmaja, ma'am, to introduce the speakers for today's Vikasana program. Over to you, Padmaja, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. It is my privilege to introduce the distinguished speakers of the day. Our first speaker is Dr. Kasi Sekar. Professor Kasi Sekar has a master's in social work and PhD in psychiatric social work. He is associated with NIMHANS for the past 4 decades. He is professor of psychiatric social work and head Center for Disaster Management. He was the former registrar, NIMHANS, an institute of national importance. His areas of interest are disaster, psychosocial support, and mental health services, children in difficult circumstances, community mental health. Dr. Kasi Sekar has received many awards. Sanna Award for the best research in the field of social work, best humanitarian services for the psychosocial care for the Kashmir earthquake survivors by the Government of India and Government of Jammu and Kashmir. Independence Day Award by the Government of Tamil Nadu. WAPR IC Award for the year 2016 for excellence in psychosocial rehabilitation. Dr. Rajeshwar Prasad Award for the social policy and social action in 2017. NAPS WI Lifetime Achievement Award for the year 2019. Dr. Kasi Sekar has worked in most of the major disasters in India since the last 3.5 decades. He is a core group member of the National Disaster Management Authority on the national guidelines on psychosocial support and mental health services in disaster management. He was a member of Karnataka State Disaster Management Committee. He is a member of the Karnataka State Disaster Management Advisory Committee. He is the secretary for the National Task Force on Psychosocial Support and Mental Health Services for COVID-19 of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare 2020. Dr. Kasi Sekar has more than 250 publications in both international and Indian journals. He has carried out nearly 50 projects with many international NGOs as well as WHO Geneva and India on psychosocial support for survivors of disaster. We request participants to kindly unmute. He is widely traveled to many countries like Africa, Australia, Europe, Asia, and other countries, including Japan, in connection with the international disaster humanitarian responses. So we are very proud to have you on this occasion.
Thank you so much, madam. Could I share my slide and can I start the presentation for the day? Are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Manvita ji, as well as Dr. Padma ji. Though in a short notice, whatever you had, I deem it a privilege to be one of a speaker in a platform where various luminaries have addressed your particular group on taking the India on a stride of issues of transform the youth to transform India, because this is a rich dividend of nearly 40% of our country in the future to determine what we are going to be as world leaders through the education. And the NEP 2020 is one such factor which brings in the vision and the three themes, what you have kept as your vision mode: know yourself, know your country, know your culture. The last one I do appreciate to a larger extent, because when we are going to talk about the NEP 2020 in terms of the education towards psychosocial well-being of learners in higher education institution, how do we enable a curriculum for psychosocial well-being of the learners is a major challenge. In this, rather than taking you through varied other sort of issues, I thought a time-tested and a working module of NIMHANS, what it has worked over the last 2 decades on psychosocial support for the students, as well as a student enrichment program and the life skills education program, how it could be curricularized over the period of a time is what we are. So before going into the PowerPoint and talking you on that, education promotes well-being is one of a major outcome in terms of any development. It increases the person's opportunity and choices in life. It promotes mental health and well-being as a core role in education to help students. And it also develops protective factors from mental ill health to that of a mental health. And rather than for a disability associated life years lost, it brings in quality associated life years gained. So we need to provide them with skills and confidence to seek help for an early intervention in case they are having. And why psychosocial support as a part of our education, if you're going to ask, I would say more than any one of the mental health professionals or the psychologically bent counselors and others, I have found in my own teachers who have taught me over the years, right from my younger days of preschooling to that of the schooling, that the teachers provide a stable, affectionate relationship for us. I do remember when I got my highest degree, it was my 7th standard teacher who hugged me and took me. Even though she was very puny, she was able to lift me up, and the pride in her I could see. And even today, I owe my gratitude to that particular teacher and a person who had been a role model for me, who was none other than a college principal who stood by me to go up in this area. Otherwise, I would have been into a management or something like that. Anyway, keeping that away, educational staff can be aware of those very difficulties what as a student we are facing, and time can be dedicated to better understanding of the crisis and impact, because this is a secondary socializing agent for anyone. And how to improve the student well-being, there are about 7 basic issues that you can improve your well-being by teaching students to name their feelings. Why are you so silent, Sekar, today? Can't you speak out to me? Did you have your breakfast in the morning? Right from that, some amount of a self-regulation, that I have to be attentive, that I have to be seated, that I have to stand up, and I need to have some etiquettes. I do remember my high school principal, or the headmaster whom we used to, HM we used to call those days, teaching about certain strong emotions and etiquettes. Why you need to stand before a teacher before being seated directly, and ask for the small etiquettes, can I sit, or things like that. Or even when he says sit, you better stand with a gratitude to them. And the type of a gratitude journals what they have taught us is much larger, and the positive time out what they give, and the way they listen to the student voices and give a choice to the student. So I find that the teachers are some of the basic pedagogic relationship in terms of our own psychosocial cultural analysis of students' learning. What we predominantly do is always to imitate a role model, and we learn much larger things from a wider interpretive of the learning experiences what we have. So the complex and differing pedagogic relationship develops across multiple spaces, not one single space. So to understand the various practices of students and the interrelationship with the program, how it could affect us, it relates to the pedagogy, wherein the teachers are the fundamental persons, and promoting the psychosocial well-being of students through mindfulness. One of a recent activity, there has been finding that the teachers could bring in a large amount of a thing in terms of the emotional distress among the students, how they regulate the difficult emotions, which are key challenges in their lives at that point of a time. And things like stress, anxiety, anger, sadness, loneliness, and insecurity are the most difficult emotions expressed by students most of the time. Through mindfulness, the students can improve awareness of their emotions, learn to relate to difficult emotions more constructively, and regulate negative emotions more effectively. So education has shown to protect psychosocial, physical, and cognitive well-being. It serves as a catalyst in understanding and coping with difficult situations, thereby affording meaningfulness to life when we are seeing a large amount of suicide and other things occurring. Higher education in particular facilitate its integration into societies and helps promotion in economic self-reliance. And students in higher education are likely to face different additional mental and psychosocial health stresses, and they are unlikely to seek help in such settings as a lack of information on the topic of mental health. So when I'm talking about it, there is a large amount of a stigma associated surrounding it, and cultural practices and norms. Whereas this is all about the ill-being when they are there. So the conceptual framework for promoting mental health and well-being, there are two interlinking sort of a concepts which are there. One is embedded to a commitment to health promotion within the higher education institutions, wherein they have to provide a structure, a process, and a culture to address the well-being of the student. I'm not talking only on the psychological ill-being, rather how to promote the psychological well-being and health, and promote effective health and well-being of the students and staff and the wider communities. Why I am talking about this, the basic reason is that the biopsychosocial model of health, which was proposed way back in 1977, has biosocial and psychological interconnectedness between all these three things. So health is just not the physical health alone, like what WHO talks about it. It is both the physical health as well as the mental health, and to a larger extent, the spiritual health, what also comes into picture. So to treat any illness, treatment, intervention should encompass the medical, social, and psychological paradigm with the intent to uh, achieve rapid recovery per se. Towards this, when I'm talking about a structure, there needs to be a healthy and a supportive, empowering workplace. There needs to be a healthy student, personal and social development, supportive health and promoting physical environments right from the playground to the larger one, academic development, curricula as well as academic, and the entire policy and planning of the higher education institution should be towards that of the larger, wider community applications in future, rather than saying that I have a bachelor's in arts or science or commerce and things like that. So psychosocial issues of students, I've already spoken to you at the individual level. There could be issues of financing for their own education by parents who might be poor or not able to afford the type of education what the student might be wanting to do, because we find some amount of a geoparody of even commercializing education as on the day. Problems in managing the study well, finding the second-hand books, though today we are having a rich dividend in terms of the materials available for us from the digital platform. However, it is difficult for them to, and the exam pressure on students is something which comes into the larger way. Though the potential of technology to improve the larger social as well as the educational development is there today, whether I am there to invest on a simple smartphone or to have a laptop like what I am having in front of me, and the various distractions for the student when they get into this sort of a technology based sort of a thing, where some of them do get addicted to certain other technological informations and other things, where we need to even go for a detoxification of such issues, and lack of proper education and career guidance, which is not there, and the student life relationship problems which springs up as a part and parcel of adolescence. So the students facing unhealthy food problem, which are there as junk foods, high expectation of the family and society, that every parent want the child to have a minimum of 100, the better of 100, or a minimum of 99.9, which is not going to be a possibility for every one of the student, and lack of time management among the kids, placement issues, wrong aims for college life. They want to prefer something of their skills or their strengths, whereas they are pushed on only for certain professional educations, student education loan problems, problems with college roommates, or lack of support from family, skipping classes, pre-decided career paths. At family level, they could have problems in terms of relationship issues, child marriage and polygamy, or in terms of gender inequalities, patriarchy and domestic violence, and large family size economic hardships, problems of too many children and child labor, and the internal family conflicts within the family, biased decision making by certain persons, or lack of communication, effective disciplining, balance between the work, school, and family life for certain children who are forced for migration from time to time for varied reasons of livelihood of the family, lack of knowledge about the technology of what they are handling currently, lack of supervision and monitoring, less proper guidance. At the institution level, again, we find challenges like teaching quality, privatization, as I spoke to you earlier, and commercialization, gap in supply and the demand, and mushrooming low quality institutes, no project-based learning, no strategies coming out through the process. And there are also political factors, what we keep talking about it, faculty shortages, research and innovation, which needs to be there. Fortunately, the NEP 2020 has brought in a gold mine for us to explore in the near future. And the structure of the higher education, infrastructure and facilities, accountability and performance of teachers are other issues. Now, what are the psychological problems among the students? Suicide among the students, I have spoken to you. Stress among them to be higher. Depression, lack of confidence and communication skills, which becomes the basic sort of a survival skills today. Poor sleep habits of working through a long term in the night, and the exam fear, substance use as an alternative or a negative coping, and addiction to mobile. All these issues are there, contributing to a large amount of psychological problems among the students, which creates a disturbance in the biological clock in terms of disturbance in sleep, reduced appetite, reduced self-efficacy, or lack of concentration, difficulties in understanding, anxiety, some bipolar disorder or psychotic disorder, ADHD, personality disorders, or post-traumatic stress disorder per se. Can there be an assessment of psychosocial well-being? Definitely. There are instruments for us to assess the general well-being. There is a scale of subjective well-being on positive mental health, wherein there is a maximum score of 20, also classified further as 0 to 6.5 as poor well-being, 6.6 to 13 as moderate well-being, and 13 to 20 as a good well-being. People can look at it as a thermometer to measure their well-being once in a quarter to see how well they had been performing. The other one is a self-reporting questionnaire by WHO or a general health questionnaire by Goldberg, which is a short and 12-item sort of an instrument. SRQ is a 20-item sort of an instrument. And this identifies non-psychotic and minor psychiatric disorders among the students per se. And these are somatic symptoms, anxiety and insomnia, dysfunction, and severe depression, what you find in a 28 items of a GHQ. And SRQ talks to you about whether the person is mildly distressed or whether he is not that stressed, which is better, or whether he is moderately stressed or highly stressed out sort of a thing. These two thermometers, one will give you on a illness front like your fever, how much you are distressed as on day, whereas the well-being scale is something like, are you maintaining a constant body mass index sort of a thing? Are you keeping well throughout your lifespan? So the psychological well-being of learners, coming to the specific topics, it is something what we talk about a Blue-Furnace theory of talking from a chromosystem wherein the individual is there, where his gender, his age, and other issues are concerned. And the microsystem, the family level, it is the family, the school, the friends, the health services, their religious affiliations, whichever is that. And as a mesosystem, the organizational interconnection between the microsystems, which directly impact the students per se or the individual, and the exosystem, which is the community, what we are talking about, wherein extended networks, the media, the social and legal services, and the neighbors. And at the macro system, the society, we do have an enabling sort of environment which talks about society, culture, subculture, the values, the attitudes, the beliefs, and the resources. What I
request all the participants to keep muted.
Beliefs and resources, what they can draw from the larger macro systems which are there. So psychosocial intervention, well-being intervention for learners need to go at a macro system sort of a thing, where they are taught about the society, the culture, the subculture, the values, the attitudes, beliefs, and the resources, what they can pull out. And in a country like India with rich cultural heritage, this is something which makes them to have a moralistic as well as a generalistic approach for them to approach. So what are the individual level support we need to think about while doing a lesson planning or going about a curricular development? How are we going to establish student-friendly relationship? How are we going to strengthen the emotional well-being among the students? How are we going to help them to manage stress, either by setting up a wellness clinic in the center, in the institution, by an infrastructure, or to promote something at an organic sort of a level where the organisms are able to spread out throughout the institution, that when I go into this particular higher education institution, the culture makes me that I talk about how I might to maintain my relationship with each and everybody, interrelationship, interpersonal relationship, the IPR issues which comes into picture. It also need to look at specializes some mental health support, because it is common to find about 10% of any of the higher education institution children to have this type of mental health problems, which are general to be found as a prevalence among the thing. So refer at risk the children who are aggressive, who have suicidal, substance or mental illnesses per se. This could be because of a large amount of other factors which could be governing, or if you are finding certain behavioral abnormalities at the higher education institution because they are just getting out of their adolescence and getting into adulthood, there could be a prolonged adolescence with some, and that adolescence could bring in very type of issues and all. And we need to have a discipline without violence. Avoid verbal, physical punishment right in front of a group of persons, and how that is going to be monitored, not between a teacher and student per se, but between student to student sort of a thing, division to division, senior sort of a junior, verbal or other physical punishments, praise and awards, what we is being given both at the institutional level, within the classroom settings and other things, and highlight the strengths and the resilience by talking about it, varied platforms of talking about each one of the individuals at some point of a time, and individual talent and ability, their coping strategies and skills. When the alumni gets out of the institute, it is always better for the institution to describe, at least highlight one of their particular strengths when we are putting their name, age, gender, and what is their particular district or affiliation and what course they completed. Under that, if you are able to say, has a good leadership quality and able to be resilient through difficult times, if it is put in, that would carry a larger amount of a value for the student input. Further, the academic support need to be less stressful form of assessment procedures, what we need to do for them. And definitely, I find there needs to be an exam preparation module, what we need to have under the student enrichment program. Positive classroom environment where cooperative learning could come in. I was very poor in mathematics in my school days, but when I had a peer who was able to teach me that, and I was supposed to teach him English, we both found to be coexisting of taking away one of the weaknesses in us and providing a supportive factor for each other. So that went into a longer relationship over a period of a time. And today I should be able to say that I am no more a slave of mathematics. So the student-centered methods need to be concentrated to a larger thing, because one teacher versus 40 or 60 students is not going to be an answer on a long term. So whether the buddy systems and other things are going to work so that there is an opportunity to talk about well-being issues in terms of healthy eating, exercises, positive relationship, or substance use or abuse, and providing healthy options in the canteen of healthy, nutritious foods, what is available to them, rather than junk food and having a balanced diet is another level. What is the family level support? We need to curricula and look at it. Parents, counseling and guidelines, communication between the family, that is between the father and mother as dyads, married dyads, as well as parents, as well as between the father and the child and the mother and the child, and whether there is a switchboard communication for reason to get something of my need, whether I go and approach my mother and my mother puts a word to the father, whether there is a direct communication. How is the bonding between the child and the parent? In some of the families where we have intervened, we do find that the child has not spoken to the father for nearly a decade after having gone into a higher education institution and a little prior to that. And understanding the needs of the children had not been there with the parents. Rather, the child needs to understand what is the need of the parent and how they want the child's career to be developed. So spending quality time, the parent-based training for home-based management should include spending quality time, supporting education, emotional care and positive parenting. Group work with the parents need to be facilitated in higher education institutions, help parents to build some skills, healthy communication with the teens, discuss mental health issues. If such sort of a group is not feasible, whether we can send the messages through the students themselves to the parents is one another way of considering of how we are intimating them the progress in the student. Can we also talk about these sort of issues to them? So the organizational support needs to be much of a supportive learning environment where pedagogical training teachers to enhance the student psychosocial well-being, as well as to look at whether they are given periodical sort of a refreshing sort of a workshops or programs of this nature for the teachers to keep on refreshing, extracurricular activities to engage the students in various activities rather than only the curricular based sort of an activity, dedicated provision of school counselors or the college counselors, which becomes a need because there are going to be 10% of children who should not be known to the rest of the children, but at the same time, provision of care needs to be given to them. Classroom-based activities that help students learn effective communication skills, enhance their social skills. Group activities are much recommended for this as a part of a lab-based activity, that is a social laboratory activities. Teacher conflict resolution skills also need to be there because sometimes there is a sort of an misunderstanding which goes around more as a rumor between the student and the teacher that this particular teacher is hardy, this particular teacher is quite good, you could approach. Engage the young people to work together to de-escalate, resolve, and provide a positive sort of a thing for the interpersonal conflicts which might be arising, and positively avoiding certain confrontation, sharing the feelings and needs honestly to show compassion by listening to others' perspectives on empathizing. Empathy is a very major component what we need to, and work collaboratively with others to others involved in the process. And peer-to-peer academic support we have found in a state level program in Kerala that the education setting can promote mutually supportive activities among the students. These activities do strengthen learners' social ecology and reduce the pressures on teachers, helping each other to overcome from the academic difficulty. And the student counselor acts as a pivot in the entire issue, need of a support and advice of a dedicated, supportive adult, alleviate the build-up stress, confidentiality to discuss home or school-based problems and focus on classroom activity. So there needs to be a system in higher education institution. There needs to be a process and there needs to be an evaluation of it. And one another major issue, what we need to curricularize as a part and parcel of the syllabus per se, it's a comprehensive developmental program designed to assist individual in making and implementing informed educational and occupational choices because they are in a quandary with the various amount of inputs from different medias as well as their own peers. It helps the students to acquire the knowledge, information, skills, experience necessary to identify career options and narrow them down to make one's own career decision. Moment they talk about their own decision making, they stick on to it much better rather than being a forced decision on them. This career decision then results in their social, financial, and emotional well-being throughout. So that is an investment. Like in the investment bond, they say, make the risk after looking at it. That is what the student will look as alternatives before choosing either the career decision or the further things go about it. The larger factor, because the suicide is found among the students to a larger extent, suicidal assessment and prevention needs to go on certain flags, red flags which are there, talking about it or wanting to die or to kill oneself, talking about feeling hopelessness or having no reason to live, talking about feeling trapped or in unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others. To put it very shortly, these are hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, and the suicidal idea per se. And as a part of a coping mechanism, people resorting to use of alcohol and drugs and getting very anxious, agitated, and sometimes behaving recklessly on the uh, influence of the substance or the other way about, and withdrawing or feeling isolated. And a large amount of these problems are identified at the higher education institution for reason. Most of these sort of mental ill health, the years of formation are around 13 and 15 for the male and females respectively. And it's not flowered totally, nor it blooms. Only when they come into the higher education institution, it starts blooming out. So when people are showing extreme or displaying mood swing, let us concentrate on such sort of issues. Kinds of questions which can be asked to identify indirect question. Do you feel like harming yourself? Do you feel like getting away from all of this? Or from what I understand, do you mean you want to kill your own self rather than directly asking, are you going to attempt suicide or something? Direct question, have you been thinking of killing yourself? Do you want to be dead and away from all these things? Whereas rather than asking these sort of a thing, we can always go for a normalizing question. Sometimes when students are feeling disturbed, they think of suicide. Is there something you are thinking about in your mind? So identify students at risk and promote social connectedness for them quickly, because they open the window only once. With the window, get through the window and open the larger doors for them. Increase the health seeking behavior, promote mental health services, provide suicide helpline number to the students, follow crisis management training at the institutes of higher education. Now, talking a bit on the main theme, what Padmaja ma'am had given to me is on the education policy, which is there to promote lasting and meaningful change, which should be a part of a system approach where we have to institutionalize this well-being as a part and parcel of the higher education institution. Teacher training programs to respect and protect and fulfill the right to education at all times from any child from any walk of a life. In that, there could be a large amount of implications or constraints. A major barrier to seek support is that simply these sort of students may be unaware of their problems, and even those who knew about it existent have no real idea of what support will be available for them in their own higher education institute. Feeling or unable or unwilling to connect to a faculty with whom they were not familiar. For reason where up to my 10th standard, I was in one particular environment which was very good for me. But from that environment, when I was graduated, it was going from a normal river flow into that of a sea, where I found rough and tides were higher where I was not able to swim, nor able to know which direction to go, which was not there in a standard sort of an environment. So higher education institution sometimes provide for a large number of students who had come through a very secured environment of the lower education institutions where they had found themselves better. When they mix up with others, they find a large amount of variations which are there. So the national education authorities at all levels should be prepared for education response, including anticipating challenges of this nature and planning how to sustain any gains that can be achieved during emergency response. And implementing regular teacher-parents training programs to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights to education at all times. National education authorities at all levels should be prepared for a real education response. Referral systems for between the education and health sector should be bonded. That should be always a sort of a referral back for all emergencies, exigencies, and this need to be clearly defined and communicated both by the health and education authority in order to protect the students and the thing. Is psychosocial well-being of learners emphasized in NEP? If you are putting a search and ask for psychosocial well-being in NEP, you will find that there are no matches found. It will be zero. But if you carefully look at the thing and read to know the meaning of each one of the articulations, what is given, it talks about create thoughtful and creative individuals in section 9.1.1, to develop holistic individuals 9.1.2, to contribute to a happier, cohesive, innovative, and progressive nature 9.1.3, to improve the cognitive skills and learning outcomes 9.2b, to inculcate life skills 11.8, to promote student wellness 12.1. These are words of wisdom which are put in rather than giving you an umbrella term of psychosocial well-being or individual well-being in the NEP. So NEP's base itself is to look at psychosocial well-being being emphasized to a larger extent. Why psychosocial well-being? Because the psychosocial issues in higher education institutions, it starts with a small pivotal of 5 to 10% of persons who might have mental disorders who need to be attended by professionals. Whereas 20 to 30% of persons will have psychosocial problems and psychosocial interventions are required. And there the number becomes higher. So we need to have involvement of the stakeholders, that is the students themselves, so whether buddy issues can be. But over and above that, we need for almost 80% of the students mental health knowledge, attitude, and behaviors, which needs to be given through proper mental health education throughout their career in bits and pieces. Last but not the mental well-being and promoting psychosocial competence is 100% requirement, where we need to make it as a larger student-based activity as well as a thing where it keeps going on promoting psychosocial competence. Psychosocial well-being in the light of NEP, it has to be a holistic education of character formation. It has to be, we need to give them some amount of a conflict resolution skills, and it has to be critical thinking skills, emotional development, care and academics, and hands-on lessons, and also in terms of the other healthy social skills. So let us not only focus on academic enhancement of putting them through volumes of materials, but let us help them to have a holistic education which will make them as a better individual. So how it can be enabled? Again, NEP interweaves a large amount of sections on this: open distance learning and online programs, choice and credit-based programs in 11.7 and 11.8, short-term certificate courses or diploma programs, short-term student projects, and community engagement, which is a hallmark in the entire thing, which is described in 11.8, online courses with blended mode of learning, because digital potential of technology is there to improve the larger social development in future. Inclusion of the same in teacher training curriculum, because teachers are going to be the providers of it. Employment of faculty training in areas of social sciences. National mission for mentoring, bringing experts to mentor the teachers and students is also spoken. So what are the ways to promote as we are nearing the deadline of my presentation? It is environment-centered or a student-centered. It has to be both a combination, living and learning climate of the higher education institutions, attitude and behavior of the staff, family and community participation needs to be there, whereas individual consultations for the student-centered who are having specific problems and specific problem-focused interventions, general classroom programs also need to be there. So strategy 1, if I'm going for a lesson planning, I need to look at curriculum on psychosocial well-being in teacher training courses, where the teachers, because they percolate the thing to larger number of training the students, they need to be capacitated at the first place. And mental health professionals to train as a strategy 2, using on-site and online, which is a blended program modality to the teachers so that they could train the students similarly. Strategy 3, the mental health professionals or the counselors in higher education institutions training the student on certain difficult and professional areas which require information to the students directly. Strategy 4, it can be induced in the curriculum, inducted in the curriculum, or virtual credit courses can be given. We are now trying out this module in about a particular state, covering a university, how it could go about a virtual credit course of how to make the student in higher education institution today to answer to the current corona surge, and how they could do it as a project and submit it after giving a part of a training on that. So who can instrument the psychosocial well-being services? The available counselors in higher education institutions, most of them may not have, but I would feel that there are more than 40 to 50% of teachers who have a psychological bent of mind and the sort of a empathy in them when the students approach them. These are the persons. So teachers can be trained on basic psychosocial support for students, and my center is committed for any such sort of a requirement from Disha Bharat in future. Peer leaders from student community can be identified and trained, and alliances can be created with local mental health professionals who help in handholding and providing higher level mental health intervention. I request that the higher education institutions to maintain a directory of such mental health professionals and keep it updated every year and provide it as a part and parcel of the calendar, what they give it to the students as an yearly calendar. So the phases and steps in psychological well-being is planning, design, implementation, and evaluation. Planning needs to identify the issues, the problem need, setting objectives, brainstorm with the team, form curriculum development team, and select the content, plan the activities, and state the intended outcomes in your design, and implement it, test and retest, revise, training the facilitators, and go about evaluation through debrief or review with your thing, redesign and report and document the services. And some of the time-tested modules, what I've spoken about, we do have this time-tested module with us. We can take it up as a certification program for Disha Bharat higher education institutions which are associated with it for a few groups of teachers. and they, through life skills education, they find new ways of thinking, problem solving, develop a greater sense of awareness, build confidence of both the students and teachers, and improve concentration. The student enrichment program has 4 different issues on the physical health, the positive mental health, address the study related issues among students, exam preparation, role and parents of teachers. Both of them have 40 activities associated with it. You can later make it up as a certificate program as a blended course back in your own institution. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm sorry that I have given only 5 to 10 minutes for discussion. I'm really sorry about that. Any questions and any other things, you can always revert back to me if there is no time on this particular email, or you are free to call me anytime on the mobile so that we would be able to provide you further steps. And if there is not much of a time with you, I would like you to put it on the chat box so that the organizers could revert back to me on the chat box and we would be able to provide you an answer for it. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
That was a very wonderful session, Dr. Sekar sir. I must say, this has given us a bird's eye view of the importance of psychosocial education and psychosocial aspect of student development. Thank you very much for the in-depth strategies shared with all our invitees of the VIKASANA program, sir. I'm sure the attendees have been benefited and we all resonate with the holistic development of students and for teachers for better engagement by being sensitive to the psychosocial aspects of students. Thank you, sir. Sir, over here, we have a couple of questions that have come in. We can take in 1 to 2 questions because of the paucity of time.
Please.
With your permission, can I give you the first question, sir?
Sure.
Sir, can you kindly let us know about the choice-based and interdisciplinary learning by special students having psychological behavioral issues?
Choice-based and interdisciplinary
learning by special students.
For special children. Very good. Now, it all depends upon what type of a special child we are handling with. Currently, we are doing some activity back in Kerala, wherein the community assisted living to that of a bud school and the integration of children with different disabilities also we are looking at. Now, if you're talking about some sort of a autism-based spectrum disorders which are there with the children normally. So our suggestion would be that these children are also having certain other positiveness in them, whether we can bring in music, drama, art, and other things as one of a choice-based education, what they can pick up, because they have a much mastery over that particular aspect, because it is the brain which is functioning for them in that particular manner. So that choice-based has to be left to the parent to identify what is the area of interest the child has shown during the lifespan, wherein the parents would be able to point out most of the time he sits along with a pencil and a paper and keeps on scribbling onto it. They might say at scribbling, but they don't find a meaning in that particular art. But if that child is put on to some sort of a course onto that, the child will later bloom. All of you do know about Beethoven, the way he is went as a music wizard. But at the same time, we need to remember that he was also a special child at a given point of a time. So identification of this need not be only the teacher's responsibility, need to have a dialogue with the parent on what type of the disability, what the person is having. I'm not talking about the other large 14 major disabilities, what the persons might have, that the school might be able to provide a ramp. We might be able to make them to be inclusive in certain areas. We could even give a braille assisted computer to them. All those systems are today we are having. What I'm talking about is for certain mental disorders and other things. And if the child is restless and other thing, how to take that negativity onto a positive sort of a note, which would provide them better sort of a thing. last but not the least, certain cultural practices within our home of allowing these children to meditate or say, oh, for a repeated sort of a thing, that makes a change even in the brain. And the child might be proving to be better. So look back at your cultural values, your cultural things, and then talk about the inclusiveness at a larger level in the school. This child might be finding something along with the mantras and tantras much better than any one of you and me.
Thank you so much, sir. And that's what we believe at Disha Bharat. Values and culture play a very important role. Thank you for resonating that message to all our invitees today. So we have time for one more question. Can we take another question?
Please, please.
So the most important question for today's times is that psychosocial well-being of learners is best understood by psychology and sociology teachers. Can we have, how can these aspects be included in teacher training curriculum? One part of it. And I think this is also partially answered in your presentation, sir. But the second part of it is, now that the curriculum is on the e-platform, how do teachers boost the energy of students during these pandemic times to keep them more learner-centric, as well as keep them motivated towards education?
Good. Yeah. First and foremost, I'm sorry, one of the other time-tested module I didn't want to give because I thought I'll go more positive in this presentation to talk about the well-being of the student enrichment and the life skills more as a promotive sort of a strategy. We do have a module, what could be incorporated again as a 40 small topics, either on a blended or a virtual course. And as I told, NIMHANS will be able to provide that to the teachers, how to intervene into the psychosocial issues. Need not be only the psychology and the sociology teachers. All the other teachers also can find benefit for themselves, for their own family, for their own children, and the rest of the school. So I'm not going to discriminate that only these teachers should do the work. All teachers can make it as a part and parcel of understanding the psychosocial intervention as a part and parcel of the larger intervention for the school community, for the college or the higher education institutions. Number one, we do have a 40 module for that, and these are all activity-based sort of a thing, which they can be always be useful to it. Now, what is that best mechanism on which we can have boost the energy of the learner-centric and motivation towards education? Very good question. Let us get out of our traditional methodology of a didactic lectureship. Let us get out of our didactic lectureship. Try to convert the didactic lectureship into assignments and activities, what the child can do and learn from that. I have been able to learn a lot, not by the books and other things, what I read through, but bringing in a meaning between the book and what the people say about it. So when you are making the learning as a sort of an art of putting 4 or 5 students together, do an activity of a small planning, how you could reach out to the persons on this particular topic would be the best sort of a mechanism, according to me. The earlier science exhibitions and other things, the students used to demonstrate the skills. For a particular person who is vegetarian, for a person to know whether this egg is boiled or not, I myself learned by that science exhibit. Uncle, you do one thing, you round up this egg. If it rounds faster, it is not boiled. If it rounds slowly, it is boiled. Look, the biology of what he learned was taught to me as a simple sort of a lesson. The students will be able to invent much larger thing when we put it in front of them after giving them the basics and say, this is a carry back home for you as a message in this particular chapter. And these are the materials which are available for you. I want you to demonstrate how this could be used in your day-to-day sort of a life. Whether we are talking about H2O or H2O5, ask them to find out what is the difference between these two. The boy will completely come back and say, what your H2O is nothing but this water, but what the H2O5 could be a sort of a alcohol or drink. Let us get them to that sort of a innovative, not just a critical thinking, but a creative thinking, how he brings out with a sort of a thing, what he has taken inside. That is going to help him out throughout the life of what that difference between H2O5 and H2O brings in on his body. Later, we can instigate question, how does it work in your brain? Which part of your brain is getting affected? The student will find why it is going. That is what the spirit of chemistry, what I want to bring in. The same way in terms of physics or in terms of mathematics and other things. So find out. And if you want, I'll give you some of the energy boosters in terms of the English and all. Have 5 little words and other things and ask them to fill up and find a fun and a fun in doing that sort of an activity. That also helps them in their vocabulary.
Thank you very much, sir. That
Those are the innovations, what is needed from the teachers today.
Definitely, sir, definitely. Insightful learning leading to creativity is most important. It's the call for today. Thank you so much for that very detailed answer, sir. On behalf of all the participants, I really thank you for answering these questions. And sir, we come to the end of the first session, and I thank you from Disha Bharat side, but I also request you, if you have time, to stay for our second session, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, one and all.
I thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful journey we had for the last 1 hour, where sir took us through the psychosocial aspects in student development, and few very important tips were given to teachers. I hope it's helped you. And now I call upon Dr. Padmaja Madam to introduce the second speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a privilege to introduce the second speaker of today's VIKASANA NEP program, Mr. Bharat Meena, I.A.S, retired in 2017 as Additional Chief Secretary of Higher Education, Karnataka. After retirement from I.A.S services, he co-founded Bharatiya Engineering, Science and Technology Innovation University, which is called as Best Innovation University, Anantapur, Andhra Pradesh, a state private university he founded with the promoters from academia. And since 2017, he has been the chairman of this university. Sir has also incepted International Academy for Indic Studies to understand the relevance of our ancient knowledge and conserving our traditional knowledge systems in modern times. He is the global chairperson of World Economic Forum for Education, and World Economic Forum for Education is a global consortium of knowledge givers and ethos, which believes that education is much more than the transmission of knowledge and skills in a formal lecture. It covers knowledge at all levels, coming from any innovator, creator, and resource person, which must receive a platform to showcase and credit. He has worked in Indian Administrative Service, that is I.A.S, for 32 years at different departments in government. He started his career in civil service as Assistant Commissioner and worked in key areas, including Deputy Commissioner, Director of Mass Education, Managing Director, Bangalore Electric Supply Company. So was also Commissioner, BBMP, BDA. He was the Principal Secretary of Agriculture Department and Additional Chief Secretary of Higher Education Department when he retired in 2017. As Additional Chief Secretary of Higher Education Department of Government of Karnataka, he started various ICT initiatives and best practices He also offered creative suggestions to Karnataka Gnana Ayog. And as Principal Secretary of Higher Education Department to Government of Karnataka, he brought in several reforms, including usage of ICT in administration in higher education. Sir has received many awards, to name a few. Sir M. Vishweshwaraya Navaratna Award for Outstanding Service by Sir M. Vishweshwaraya Engineering Foundation Trust, located in Bangalore. Sir has also received Decennial Celebration Award for Outstanding Achievement in Education by Public Relations Council of India. Sir, we are very happy and we are privileged to have you as a speaker on this occasion. Over to you, sir.
And thank the organizers for making it part of this important series of webinars under the name Vikasana, linking it with the new education policy. The topic given to me is role of teacher in psychosocial well-being of learners. This very important topic, which is listed here today. New education policy itself is a path-breaking policy measure by Government of India, and it covers all the aspects of education. And the committee has done human service in bringing out such report, which government has accepted and is implementing this policy document. So this policy document also covers this aspect, which was not given much importance earlier in previous times. So I would start my presentation with the quote of Swami Vivekananda ji. Swami Vivekananda ji was not a professional psychologist, but his rich experience of yoga and his dealing with different types of people around the world, and his keen sense of observation and penetrative intelligence and spiritual insight, some of his utterances and counsels and guidance reveal the most modern psychological ideas which are worth implementing in development of personality of everyone. Swami Vivekananda's quotes are relevant and they are so inspiring for all of us. I would also like to mention how our thoughts affect everything around us. If we have positive thoughts, we have positive impact. If we have negative thought, it has negative impact. It has negative impact not only on us, it has negative impact on others. That's why in our yoga traditions and everywhere, if we have to seek peace, we have to be positive and we have to affirm always positivity. At the end of the day, every time whenever we feel tired, stressed, at that time it is the positive thoughts which give us peace and harmony. I would just give one example. Dr. Masaru Emoto in Japan conducted a study. He collected water, pure water from a stream, and then divided that water into half and put it in 2 jars. One jar he kept in the room where people with positive outlook were staying and they were living there. The other jar he kept in the other place where the people with negative thoughts were living there. So after some time, he took that water from the jar, put it, melted it, put it in the ice, and after it was frozen, he took photographs with good instrument, and he analyzed the photo, of the two I.A.S bodies. In the one which was with kept in a people were with positive outlook, this was very nice and gave very good image, and there was no distortion in the integration of all the molecules of water. The other one which was in the jar, where the negative thoughts were there with the people, its image was so distorted, disorganized, and it was not in good shape. So he came out with the finding that the thoughts of people have impact not only on ourselves, but also in water, on nature, or everything around us. That's why the positivity in our life is very important, and that's what Swami Vivekananda has always spoken about our culture and our things positively everywhere. In today's time, the other development which has happened, and we are unfortunately witnessing that in present days, is COVID pandemic. Throughout the world, I think there is no example in the history where any pandemic has turned the apple cart upside down. We thought we are in the starting of the 21st century. We are making so much progress in science and technology, and we were probably taking pride in what we have achieved as a human beings. But this pandemic has rosered our lives and has shown us that we are nothing. We are a pack of dust in the total universal existence. This pandemic has impacted so much. Students, teachers, everyone in society, the job seekers, so many fortunes have been destroyed by this. So this impact of the pandemic on the students is catastrophic. The teacher also has to cope with so many things. He has to teach the students in a face. He is also stripped of the faces of the students. So without seeing their faces, he has to teach and communicate to them and educate them. So that is a big challenge. These are the emergency situations, as we know today, how this is affecting our physical health and overall development of the children and youth. So this topic still becomes more relevant here. The emergencies also have additional impact on the functioning of the families, communities, and it impacts the development of the youth in that way. Additionally, emergency can have a big impact on the whole education system itself. So in this scenario, if we talk of the education policy, I think it's a very relevant topic, and this needs to be continued. We from university also organize a series of webinars, more than two dozen webinars we organized during this period, and I think that webinar is the order of the day. Now, coming to the topic of today, what we said, what is psychosocial well-being? It's a multidimensional thing which consists of psychological, social, and subjective components which influence the overall functionality of the individuals in achieving our true potential as a members of the society. So this aspect has to be understood by all our teachers. I think that understanding will further help them teach in the way which is expected from them in these times. It also incorporates physical, economic, social, mental, emotional, cultural, spiritual determinants of the health. 2 days back, I got an example. Our registrar called us and said that 3 students came from home and they wanted to study at the university. Though from university, we have sent students, and presently because of lockdown, the students are not there. But they said, sir, at home we cannot teach, we cannot study. That's why please allow us to stay in hostel. So we accommodated them. But that is the way it is creating, I think, difference in the lives of people. This mental health, which it includes so many aspects: emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we act, and then how we handle the stress. So new education policy gives us opportunity to assess and reassess the education system, the way we teach to the students. So for teachers, it's really an opportunity to prove that they are really the best in these present times. And the new education policy gives that scope to teachers to cope with the new developments and handle the mental health aspects of the students. The mental health is also one of the biggest factors of the students' academic growth. And in that growth, there are so many things which come in picture. The well-being of the individual, when we talk about that, it includes coping with the various stresses of everyday life and realizing the full potential of that individual, so that that individual or the student becomes a potential member or productive member of our society. Health and education, as we all know, are strongly interconnected. They are linked. So this policy, present policy, proposes to bring the paradigm shift in the Indian education. In doing so, it recognizes the need for proper nourishment, good health to aid optimum learning, and proposes certain health-related investments. Those investments have to be done, and which are necessary in the present day scenario. That is what this policy talks about. I would just brief, you all know about the new education policy, but I would just bring some few glimpses of the new education policy which pertain to psychosocial well-being. It talks about the holistic experience. Our previous speaker also spoke about the holistic aspect. And that is the cornerstone of the policy. It's not only education, academic part. It talks about sports integration. It talks about the other aspects. It provides flexibility in course curriculum and other things, so that the students are prepared to handle their life situations, and then they are in a better position to take decisions for their future in their career. That's what it allows. For the teacher, it's a very important thing to change his or her strategy to how he or she teaches to the students. The pedagogical practices have to undergo huge changes, should increase the students' cognitive abilities while promoting their physical and psychological well-being. It's here the teacher has to play a very important role in achieving the objectives of this policy. Teacher also has to make meaningful contributions to the communities. They can introduce more skill-based and vocational learning aspects in the curriculum, in the schools and higher education aspects. Skill-based and vocational programs can also help youth with severe mental illness develop the skills and attitudes which are necessary for their survival. So that policy gives us ample opportunity to practice so many new things in our academic curriculum. The glimpses of the policy also includes many other aspects. It talks about digital learning, along with the subjects like science and social sciences. The curriculum also must contain courses that make education well-rounded. It must be useful. The education must be fulfilling, and it should include games, sports, and fitness of the individual. Such education will develop their skills like collaboration, self-initiative, teamwork, and responsibility. That is what we need in our students in the present generation. The policy also proposes the bagless days. It doesn't emphasize more on carrying the weight loads every day to schools. And it also emphasizes on engaging with the local vocational and other activities such as sports and gardening, and also involvement of the community. Higher education institutions will have to have subjects like sports, art, music to provide a multidisciplinary and stimulating environment. That new environment and inclusive environment is what is important in our policy. Students with this education will deal with the failures and prepare themselves with an attitude of winning and team spirit. That is what new education policy envisages, and it's the teachers which can bring about this type of changes. This change is going to increase employability in youth and turn help in reducing stress over the jobs and being financially secure. The decision to choose which field is now made easy, and eliminating the rigid streams in secondary education, and with more structured way of learning, students will be able to have the clarity of what they want to do in life. So that choice to the students is made easy now in the present day education and new policy. The new policy also emphasizes on mentoring, creating, it talks of course, creating the autonomous bodies and all that you are aware of that. The new education policy also gives us the scope for multiple exits. It's not like continuous education. When students can, depending on his or her situation at home, they can exit at any point of time, and they are given credit for whatever they have learned during the year. So that's a very new aspect of the policy. The policy also gives emphasis on teachers training, because so many concepts have been incorporated in the new policy, and teachers are the same. They are the teachers of yesterday, they are teaching today, and they are the teachers of future. So they have to realign their thinking, their pedagogy, and their way of teaching with the new education policy and what is expected in new education policy. I think that is where the teacher's role is very important. All education institutions have to also do a lot of, I think, changes in that. New education policy also talks about, for the first time, 6% GDP expenditure, which is a huge expenditure. I think it will be double of what we are presently having. It talks of support teachers to use activity and learning centered methods. The new pedagogy, as I have already talked about that. It supports the teachers to use sports, because sports, lot of emphasis has been given on the sports, outdoor activities, and flexible curriculum. So those are the, I think, things which are there. The students should not be feeling stressed in going to schools. It also, now it is here that teaching methods have to be developed. The teachers have to use locally available materials, whatever is available there, and whatever is possible. Using those scarce resources locally, they have to teach in the classes, and then they have to have instances which have, by using the wide range of methods which support all senses, and using the different ways of grouping the interest, ability, and mixed groups. See, in a classroom, when about 40 to 60 students are there, every student is not same. They are different. Their learning abilities are different. So teacher has to devise a method of coming to their level and then teaching them. That is the challenge for them. The teachers also have to encourage peer learning, because peer group support system can be very good in developing interpersonal relationship, and it gives the space for mutual support to one another. That's the focus of on new education policy. It also talks about engagement of civic engagement. That means what is going around in outside the school. That is important. It is not like going to class and coming back. The student has to learn what is happening in the environment, and that is possible only when civic engagement is possible. The present day pandemic has taught us so much about civic engagement. There are volunteers who are helping people. There are volunteers who are helping everywhere in traffic, in giving food to the patients, in management of the health system. So all this is very important, and students have to learn these aspects in their education. The community involvement and promotion of sense of community is very important, and the teachers have to impart that type of education in them. This type of education will definitely require for redesigning the courses, and then it calls for public engagement as a central component of sensitizing the students. The students have to be aware of what is happening in the society, how things are being managed, what are the challenges. So all that type of sensitization is possible only when teacher himself is sensitized. He has to think from that perspective first, internalize what is happening around his or her surroundings of the school, and then sensitize these students in that way. That is a very big challenge for our present teachers. Students have a diversity of skill needs. It's imperative that the teacher encourages them to enable them to speak openly about their views, interests, and needs. We cannot snub the students because today, because of technology and access to technology, many students are knowing more than what teachers know. So they may ask so many questions. The teacher has to learn what is happening around him or in the world, rather than snubbing him. So that type of attitude has to change, and he has to accommodate to that type of new learning, and thinking together to tackle the difficult problems. Like teamwork has to be taught to the students. Fostering of creativity and realizing the potential of the group intelligence collectively. That's a very good aspect of new pedagogy, which teachers have to adopt, and that's where by adopting such technology they can enable students to handle the conflict situation and confrontations, and this is how they have to use their power as a facilitator in a constructive way. Definitely teachers have so much of respect in society, so they have to live up to that respect, and they have to really earn that respect. It's not that it will come naturally to them. So as I said, they have to, it's important that they create positivity, and then care learning environment. They should show caring attention to an individual student. Some students may be lagging behind, some may be forward. So those who are lagging behind, for them they have to give a specialized training to them, and especially the special children, they have to take care of them, and they have to listen to the thoughts and feelings of the students. They cannot ask them to keep quiet, or they cannot afford not to give them opportunity to speak out. They have to pay attention to their interest, in which field they have interest. That interest has to be brought out clearly, so that they learn clearly and become good citizens. For all these, healthy learning environment is required. For that's where teachers can play an important role. They have to organize regular health checkups in the schools, so that 100% immunization, health monitoring of the students can happen. In the present day situation, we all are aware that how the taking vaccine is important, how we have to support in that situation. So that's where the role of the teachers become very important. They have to also special shorter teaching education programs they can organize, which will enable the which can involve the eminent persons who can teach to the students. It is something from outside. It's not that all the what is written in the books has to be taught by teacher. They can also pull on the resources from the community and can involve them in the teaching thing, so that their expertise can really help students learn many things. Mental health, we have been talking about this thing is very important, and teachers can enable the educators to identify, support, and refer the students needing help. Such students who need such special helps can be organized. Experts can be asked in times to come. Of course, every institution has to make provision for experts, but in the present day situation, also teachers have to enable that. They have to increase the knowledge, behavior in teachers, parents, and support the students who require upgradation in their mental health and well-being. The NEP lists out number of initiatives which need to be implemented at the school level, and which mainly should involve of the community and participation of the schools in such initiatives which are envisaged in the new education policy. Schools have to organize online workshops, as is happening, of course, now with the use of technology, and in such webinars they can highlight the new education policy for better clarity. In the schools, the appointment of psychologists is, as I was saying, that is necessary. In the times to come, I think that will become very necessary. Then parent-teacher meetings have to happen regularly. Sessions on realizing the normal, abnormal psychological patterns of a child can be taught. The other day we were just living in a colony area. Some students were playing. Some boys were playing. When we asked one boy to be side while we were walking on the pathway, one child started abusing suddenly. And when we checked up with the parents of that child, we found that the child is not able to cope with the present situation of getting confined in the present day situations, and also not getting the job opportunities and such things. So such things are affecting in a big way, and then our teachers have to be aware of such psychological changes which are happening in a big way in the students. So this basically if the teacher has to understand all that, he has to understand the psychology in a better way, so that the emotional intelligence or emotional well-being of the student is the priority, and what is his intelligent quotient, that also should be understood by the teacher. So that is possible only when the teacher himself upgrades his knowledge of psychology and the other aspects, social aspects, which may affect the students at home and at community level. So that is where the teacher's understanding is very important. In all this, there has to be respectful relationship of the teachers and the community, and the place of learning. In the place of learning, see, everyone has to play his or her role in that way. Everyone involved in the school community deserves to be respected, valued, and treated equally. It's not that only the teacher is important there. The person who is giving food, midday meal to the student also is important. The other person who is supporting also is important. Community is important. That is where the respect has to be seen everywhere in the school surroundings. That's a very important aspect which teacher has to understand. There are changes in attitudes and behaviors which can be achieved with positive attitudes, and that positive attitude has to be there in every teacher. And that's where the training, special training to teacher is required. The new education policy offers educators and learning communities evidence-based online professional learning, complemented by a range of tools and resources to turn learning into action to promote mental health and well-being from early years up to 18 years of age. So that is where the new education policy gives so much of flexibility and learning to them. Now, I have, while talking, said many things about teacher, but then whatever we talk about teacher, I think every teacher has to do his job well. So what they can do, they can list out is what are the do's and don'ts for them. There cannot be do's and don'ts in general for everyone. Some may be good in some things, some they may require certain things, some may have some habits, and they may display that habit of smoking or anything like this, or telling lie, not coming on time. Such things they may be doing. So that correction has to be done by them. So that is possible only when they list out what are the do's and don'ts for them. These are not the do's and don'ts from the government, from the top, from the school. I think that is where the teachers have to do that part. And the teacher has to bring about discipline in himself or herself. That's very important. The discipline of coming in time, discipline of teaching, discipline of in the students enforcement. That also is important, and that is where the teachers have to do that job well. They have to also realize that this call of duty in the light of new education policy has to be from within. It is not that we are telling or somebody is telling that they should do that. It should be done by them as their duty, sacred duty, and that is where their understanding is important. The teachers must feel that he holds the interest, the students who come to schools and colleges and there, I think they should be treated as our own teachers, their own teachers, and that feeling has to be there in them. The external monitoring and evaluation is not enough, and that is not sufficient. We cannot put a monitoring system everywhere every day. That is impossible. So NEP gives us this opportunity to us to introspect and reform and do the course correction wherever required, and then that participation of every student is necessary. We have to translate what is envisaged, what is taught to us, what is talked about teacher, and the great role being played by teachers. When we talk on Teachers' Day, I think we talk so much of so many things about the teacher and the role of teacher and importance. I think even if we do 10% of that and practice that in reality, I think teacher's job is done. That is what is required. We don't have to celebrate Teachers' Day only one day. It has to be celebrated 365 days. That is important. And as I said, we should involve community, parents in the affairs of the school and development. He himself has to be role model for the students, because students directly or indirectly learn so many things from him. And when they become good citizens, I think the teacher's role is important. Throughout their life, they remember the teachers. Good example of good teachers they always give. So teachers have to imbibe salient aspects of the policy and implement it with right earnest. Our society and nation need good leaders all the time. And leaders come from society itself. They don't come from anywhere else. Leaders come from society, they represent society. So they learn so many things from society. So these leaders, future leaders, students are our future leaders. So their destiny can be shaped in the temples of learning, in our education institutions, higher education institutions. And teachers who are manning these institutions, they have that responsibility of shaping destiny of good students, and their destiny is the destiny of the nation ultimately. So that is where I don't have to talk about that so much. God has given us powers, all of us, and we can bring about the changes. If we use our brain properly, our intelligence properly, I think so much can be done. The studies show that all of us, on an average, use 5% of our brain capacity. And genius people like Nobel Award winners and Einstein and all that, they have used up to 10% of their brain capacity. That means 90% of that capacity is still hidden and we are not using it. And teachers have to inculcate ways and find ways of using more potential of our brain in learning by the students and by themselves. As is said, there is no shortcut to success. If the students have to be successful and have to be inspired, they have to have only 1% of inspiration. 99% they have to be taught to perspire, because behind success 99% is perspiration. That's what famous quotes are there. How society is managed, I don't have to talk at this forum, but I'm sure the teacher's role is very important. They have to inculcate we feeling in students, and not I feeling. We all are selfish for our survival, but for doing community things, we have to always promote that we feeling, collective feeling, and common intelligence. That's where it is required. And we in our country, we have to take it forward. Our country is facing lots of challenges, the challenges from our neighbors, the other challenges which are happening, the onslaught of media from outside, Western culture. So all this further complicates the situation. And in this situation, I think the role of teacher, which is very important in shaping the destiny of the students. And with these words, I conclude my talk here. I thank the organizers, Disha Bharat, Bangalore University, for giving me this opportunity to be part of this webinar. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a pleasure to listen to you. Thank you so much for such an inspiring session. Yes, as you have said, it's about time that we move from me to the we, thereby mentoring our students towards holistic development. Thank you, sir. So we have a couple of questions, and I think these questions are based upon after what they have been inspired by you, after what our attendees have been inspired by you. They have put in a couple of questions. Can we take the questions now, sir?
Yes, please.
The first question is, do tinkering labs and vocational classes help in skill enhancement of students? If it does, how does it help?
See, the education has to be relevant for a person when he passes out of the institution and goes in the society. So there is a difference. There is a difference, vast difference in what we teach in our textbooks and what is required when we finally go to workplace. So that difference in the learning can be met by using the skill aspect, skill development. Somebody may be good in the book knowledge, but he may not be good in communicating. So communication skill can be done. These skills also will help him find out what he or she has to do as a student when he passes out. So that is where the skills sets can help them. So there can be personal skills also, there can be vocational skills. So it can vary.
Thank you, sir. The next question we have is very interesting. As teachers and educators, can you please share your views on how to channelize students towards a vision?
Pardon me, can you repeat this?
The question reads, as teachers and educators, can you please share your views on how to channelize students towards a vision?
Towards a vision.
Yeah, how to channelize the students' minds towards a vision.
Have you heard our late President Abdul Kalam ji, when he was interacting always with the students? Why he was interacting with the student was with that view only. He wanted to inspire them, tell them the stories, tell them the narration. The students, see, students as a human beings, they are innocent. They may be, their knowledge is limited. So they do not know up to certain stage, up to SSLC and all. They don't know what is happening outside, what job they will pick up. They will say 10 jobs, I will do this, I will do that. But then what vision they should share, what they should do in life, what their parents tell, what peers tell, and what they want to do as a person, the teacher is an enabler in that space. So if they keep talking to them, mentoring them, they will come to know so many things from them. And that interaction, close interaction with the students, will definitely channelize that vision of the student into future careers.
Thank you, sir. We have another question, which is again very interesting. The question reads, mentorship is an essential aspect of today's education. Any tips on mentor training? How can mentors be better equipped to maintain psychosocial well-being of learners?
Yeah. See, mentor, who is a mentor? Mentor is a person who is a friend, philosopher, and guide. It is not like a master. He is not a teacher at that point of time. When you are mentoring somebody, you are trying to assess the potential of that person, and realizing that potential of the person, guiding him or her as to what should be done, connecting him or her with the resources which are good. Somebody may be good in singing, okay, somebody may be good in public speaking, but then that student may not have the opportunity. So the mentor can create such opportunities with the help of colleagues, with the help of institutions, so that that student finds expression in that. So this is a very dynamic relationship of mentors with the students. The mentoring is, how do we mentor our kids? Tell me, our kids, we also mentor them, but then at many times we find as parents, they don't listen to us, but they listen to the teacher. So many times, many teachers we have heard, they come to us saying that my teacher is, my student is, my child is not listening to me, you please help them. If he's not listening to parents, how can he listen to the teacher? But the society we expect teacher to do that role, and that is possible as a good mentor. And you have to lead by example. It is not that you do something and talk something. People, students will not follow. So you have to be role model for them, and that is possible when you internalize what you are talking. You have to walk the talk.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There's yet another question. It says, which kind of teaching tools, e-tools, regarding NEP can be useful to the students? I think the question is, what kind of e-tools do we need to prepare ourselves so that they can start teaching well when NEP is rolled out?
Yeah. See, there are now you have seen how we have migrated from the previous time, pre-COVID situation to present situation. If we were talking of the same tools now at that point of time prior to pre-COVID, people were not listening to us. They were not prepared for that. But now there has been paradigm shift. The education, for example, our university now, from day one, we closed the university. We have not dropped any single class. That means all classes were held on time, and we used Google tools, Google Class we used. Similarly, there are other platforms also which use. So there we connected with all the students, though they are in remote areas, but then we recorded whatever they presented and taught, so that they can see later on whenever the connectivity was available to them in rural areas. So this way, it is not one tool. There are a number of tools which have to be used, and digital tools have to be used to reach out to the student and to teach them. And in new education policy, when we implement, we cannot use only the chalk and blackboard. We have to go beyond that. There can be intermix, but then it has to be digital tools which have to be used in our teaching.
Thank you, sir. There is another question which follows this. And the question is, we have delayed, as you said, we have delayed in using these tools. Do you think it's a loss for the education system and our students?
See, it is in Hindi they call it "Jab jago tabhi savera." Whenever you are awake, from that time only it is morning starts. So it may be late in the sense that other countries have moved forward, but then we are not behind. We are very good in adoption of the technology. So for example, now what we have adopted, when I was in higher education, that time we thought of recording all classes in the private institutions. Good teachers classes would be recorded, and that would be shared in a common pool and will be made available to all students across the state. That was the vision with which we started, and many colleges shared their recorded classes. Now one teacher cannot teach everyone, but with the technology it can be taught. So that time it was not implemented with full swing, and after my retirement it was not taken up so seriously. But present day, now the same thing we are talking about. We are talking of sharing the pool of knowledge, sharing the best lectures online, sharing those things what we have, changing our strategy, somebody seeing our recorded classes. So all that is happening what was thought many years back. So though we may be late, no problem, but then now also we can move forward. There are many countries which are not as developed as we are. They are still far behind. So we can catch up. Definitely we can move forward.
Thank you, sir. And I think we just have time for one more question. If you may, please, can I go ahead with the last question?
Please.
Thank you, sir. The question reads, teachers handle different generations of students over a period of time. How should the teacher equip himself or herself for this situation?
See, the teacher has to become a child. He has to become a student. He has to see himself what student wants, and then learn that quickly and then deliver it, how it is to be taught. See, the old days of our transparency sheets and our presentations, it has undergone change. Now they are having smartphones. They are using that. They are updated with the knowledge. So all that is there. So teacher has to be updated. If teacher doesn't update his knowledge or her knowledge, then he cannot teach. He cannot earn respect of the students. Definitely he will not be respected. So he has to keep abreast of the situations, use gadgets himself and herself, and then become at least equal to the students or better than the students. Then he will be able to teach them.
Very well said, sir. I think it is a joint effort by teachers and the other stakeholders in our society, and we should jointly mentor students so that they have a better future, and then we have a better tomorrow along with them, side by side. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for such a very wonderful session. It was very knowledgeable. I would like to thank you on behalf of all the participants and Disha Bharat for answering these questions. And I thank all of the invitees who have asked the questions, who made the session very lively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Thanks the organizers and all the participants.
Thank you. It was such an erudite session. And with this, I would call upon Srimati Janaki Bhaskar Madam, who is a volunteer of Disha Bharat, to propose the vote of thanks for today's Vikasana session. See you all in the next Vikasana session. Thank you so much. Over to Srimati Janaki Bhaskar, Madam.
Ma'am, you are on mute. Janaki, ma'am, you are on mute.
You are muted.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. It was a very enriching and enlightening session given by both the speakers. Thank you very much, sirs, both of you, and the participants. Of course, you are one who is making these active webinars happen, participants. First of all, I want to thank both the speakers. Dr. Sheikh sir, very enriching. It was a very articulated speech. You very clearly explained what are the needs for creating mindful, healthy individuals. It's a very important thing, especially during the pandemic. We are seeing that we can achieve with the resources that are there at various levels. That was all very well explained by him. He clearly explained how we can improve the mental and physical and spiritual health of students at individual level, family level, institutional level, and society level. Finally, thank you, sir, for giving formula to teachers to grow from teachers to guru, and again students also to transform themselves into more socially responsible and sound individuals, which our country really needs. The second speaker again, Sir Batlal, also gave a very enlightening and enriching speech. He gave a very detailed explaining how a teacher can have his or her role in creating a psychosocially sound individual. He gave detailed layout of all supportive features that NIP 2020 has to offer so that we can achieve this main aspect of teacher and learners support. Balal gave a comprehensive understanding of psychosocial well-being outlined in NIP 2020. He also brought a beautiful example of how we take the spirit of volunteering that pandemic has taught us. To community learning in NIP 2020 talks, Balal sir said, also highlighted important teachers laying their attitude to learn themselves as create a positive learning atmosphere for learners. Thank you both of you for giving us speech. Really boost our moral and us confidence that NIP 2020 has a lot of things to offer where we can use the app to create better individuals and ultimately achieve the ultimate aim of NIP 2020, make India the Guru. Thank you. And again, not thanks a lot to all the participants for being. We are also attended with this sessions that are happening. And to say that we are having 5 more programs lined to the end of the year. Kindly don't miss these. There are really immense players who are trying to bring, who are very indirectly involved with the 2020 aspects. I will thank one of the Sharat for giving me this opportunity to be our wonderful team who are really committed and time in bringing me in Ashwaguru. Thank you, and all that. Request all you finally to be safe and stay home. Only request all you must be vaccination. Thank you very much for a wonderful afternoon. Thanks a lot.